Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the final meeting of the Housing Meetup Advisory Group. Today is Thursday, April 5th. Yeah, we're ready to start our meeting. Before we really go any further, I would just like to thank this group. These meetings have been inspirational, honestly. We don't always agree, but everyone has been a contributor and pleasant, and we have worked really hard. There's been very, very little fluff in these meetings. We come here, we work, we get a lot of things done, and I personally am really proud of the plans that we put together and the work that we've done here. And so I just want to say thank you because, you know, who knows? We'll see each other again. I don't know what Tuesday. Tuesday. It's not going to be our little intimate group. So I just want to say that, you know, these meetings have been long, really kind of tortuous, but it's made it really pleasant. And say thank you, appreciate that. And I hope the public does too. I add something else on it, and I appreciate it also. I think what's really productive about these meetings is that we have people that are representing different, you know, constituents in town and have different skills, from developers to attorneys to architects to planners. So it's been a pleasure to work with a group that everybody brings something to the table in the of expertise, and everybody, as you mentioned, has been really respectful of each other. So thank you. And I want to thank Heidi for being such an amazing co-chair and for really being such a pleasure to work with. All right, so moving on. We have some minutes to approve. So,
as usual, I have some edits about, but I don't know if they're worth discussing. I guess. Oh, the other one, yes, that on the first page it says we're simply talking about the good things that will happen from this planning. Yeah, we were talking about what was it called, workforce housing, and whether we needed to have a special provision for slightly higher affordability for workforce housing. And there's a sentence: variety of home pricing could be of benefit to local workforce as well as out of state employees. I have no idea what could it be referred to as out of state employees.
Well, I listened to the recording recently, and it was talking about like kind of recruiting employees from out of state to live here to work locally.
Okay.
So I can edit it to say what I just said.
Edit to say that as well as encouraging employees. Well, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, revised, will be revised. Okay, but that's the only thing that really was questionable. I wonder if it's okay, all the other little nothings that are just for clarity. We could approve it and say that Alex will review Jean's pencil notes, which are approximately 10, to see if any of them should be incorporated.
Oh yeah, we had a whole set that we had to ourselves.
All right, there we go.
all right, so do we have a motion with regard to minutes?
What I just said is my motion.
Excellent. We have a second for Jean's. And so, any more discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as
Aye.
days? right, so our next subject we're gonna move on to is an update on the capital memo and the traffic study.
Here, we discussed the capital memo at length at the last meeting, so I just wanted to highlight the changes that were added in based on our discussion. I was asked to add in some population growth estimates, those are on the table on page 2. Added more language to be really clear that any developments would have to comply with building code and fire code. I added in language from the state's guidelines that compliance with the MBTA Communities Act does not require a municipality to install new water or wastewater infrastructure or add to the capacity of existing infrastructure to accommodate future multi-family housing production. So just to really speak to, the town would not be required to make a project viable if the infrastructure wasn't there to support. Added some language to try to be more clear that our overall stormwater management is both quality and quantity focused. That Homes Work maintains the town's on-street overnight parking ban. There's no proposed changes to that. And added in a paragraph that just spoke to, at your last meeting, you requesting that staff try to move forward with the traffic study. So those are the only changes to the memo. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question in reading this. It had occurred to me when I read it previously. I read it again. On page 2, when we talk about the elementary school and the middle school, we don't say anything about the high school. It seems as though a town meeting member reading this would say, what about the high school? And if it's simply that there is expected to be no impact on the high school, it should say that somewhere. Yeah, people will ask that question.
Add in the line.
Just some. And then on page 4 in the summary under Department of Public Works, in the 6th line, it says DPW will also be undertaking drainage, sewer, and transportation projects. However, as this section goes on, it also refers, of course, there's a whole section on water, and also refers to water projects. So I wonder if water was inadvertently left out of that sentence. Okay, because it does say the town has been investing, now I'm looking at page 5, has been investing in the town's water treatment storage, and the work continues. Planning is underway to do this, that, and the other. It's not as if we're saying there's no need to do anything with regard to water. So I think it may have just been inadvertent to leave water out of that list of
Yeah, I think you're right.
things on page 4. Okay.
In terms of the traffic study, just to give you an update, we have met with one of the engineering firms that the town has on call for certain roadway projects. We've met with them twice to talk through scoping that study. We also spent time today gathering all the traffic studies that we already have that may be in the area so that we don't have to recount things that we already have data for. So our goal is to hopefully have a final scope tomorrow or Monday by the latest. The town manager has let the finance committee know that we are interested in requesting a reserve fund transfer for them if the estimate for that scope exceeds the funds that the planning department currently has. So they have this on their agenda for next Wednesday, May 1st, to consider that reserve fund transfer for this support this scope. In terms of the scope, what we had talked with the team about right now is to really focus on analyzing what are the existing roadway conditions today, and then what are the anticipated conditions under the likely build out of the base and the neighborhood housing plan. We are not asking them to do the impacts of the full build out because the likely build out is what we anticipate. And that's similar to the Needham Center overlay,
Yes.
practice study that we had done to accompany that rezoning, initiative. So with that kind of existing conditions and anticipated conditions, they will be able to identify areas where they think there might be pinch points and may require mitigation. Anything to add? No. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question, I just want to, we've had, the staff has had like 20 times. These guys are meeting several times a week in between our meetings, as just. So, I just have something to add, just because I think you did an amazing job with all of this. One thing that we typically do when we do certifiable studies for the state, for Commonwealth, for DCAM, is that we put a kind of methodology at the top, because there's so much information. This came out of so much information, and it's at the bottom of links. But maybe at the top where you say relevant town departments, maybe if you could say, list them as part of the methodology so that it's all in one location, and then keep all of the notes below. But I think that would be helpful to know all of the studies, because some of them are fiscal year 2025, right, and 25, 29, so that it's just a list of like how we came about to put all this information. For people that, it's a big document, just so that everybody understands that there's a lot of backup related to this. Okay. Okay, so it sounds like there are no questions on Katie's review of these updates. And so we're going to move. Okay, so then we're going to invite Gary Adimian up to the table. He is going to discuss with us his citizens petition. And Gary, I think is here.
Hi, dear.
So first, accept my invitation to be a panelist.
Oh, I think it's no problem.
Will you decline? Let me try again.
So
I think there's one. Sorry. We don't usually do this to our guests. Actually, you're the only guest. Probably
Just like this.
Sorry.
So you're already seeing. First of all, thank you. We had problems. Appreciate that. Multiple days worth of work. So. So the first question is, how did we get here? we actually reached out to the town and asked if there was going to be an engineering study, a technical study of the proposed zone. And the answer led us to Brady's citizen petition. I just want to go through a couple quick highlights of it. Many of you are very familiar with it, but the basis of the petition in accordance with section 1.1 Needham's general bylaws. The purpose of the petition is providing town meeting voters of the town with factual information relative to the measures. Specifically, to hire a technical consultant to perform an independent evaluation of the potential infrastructure impacts caused by the changes in zone, capital infrastructure, along with visual imagery such as three-dimensional rendering of the proposed zoning, which would enable the lay public to better understand the current zoning. So that's sort of the background there.
Could I just ask you to speak a little louder? I got a text from somebody on Zoom that they're having trouble hearing you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Would Mr. Jingan like to change places with me and be near the owl?
So I understand that because listening to many of the meetings, it's hard to speak with this car. But you need to have
We'll do it for next.
So I guess many of us have looked at the process here, and you guys really deserve a lot of credit. Hours and hours of work. Even difficult for a layperson to follow 3-hour meetings, 2.5-hour meetings. So thank you for all for serving in this board. It takes a lot of dedication. We've tuned in and we've studied the RKG assessment, and a lot of questions came up. Is the RKG firm independent? Does RKG have the relevant technical expertise, basically to address our citizen and to look at the town? So the conclusion was that RKG is more focused on the MBTA, which makes sense. That's why they're here. They're MBTA consultants. We looked further at the RKG team, outstanding team of about 10 people. And they, in fact, do have a lot of excellent experience, experts in urban planning, housing strategies, and accounting. But they do not have the requisite technical engineering expertise to evaluate the key issues that we're looking for, that we believe the voters and meeting members will need to see in order to be fully informed. RKG does not provide capital planning, capital improvements, civil engineering, environmental engineering, architectural consulting, or construction service consulting. That's not within their purview. Katie, you put a lot of work into this memo. It's outstanding. We've gone through that. Thank you for that. Right at the beginning of the memo, it talks about the town's consultant RKG has run 6 analyses, and that's the document. So as we go forward, the town's draft memorandum does not include many citations as far as what research, who's spoken to, how they came to that conclusion. So it is difficult to independently validate this. Our reading in it suggests that it's heavily reliant on these 6 analyses that were run by RKG. The first analysis is the propensity change. we did look at this propensity very closely. And, you know, the current analysis does appear to be more of an opinion than engineering data, engineering factual, which is what our petition calls for. For example, our independent research regarding the evolution of the phrase propensity for change, it shows that it's not widely recognized out of the industry, but as a novel, unproven academic sort of construct. Petition will remedy this gap in information because we do see that there is a technical gap here on capital construction analysis, and things that are needed to supplement RKG's work. Again, experts in zoning, experts in urban planning, and we appreciate their hard work. For example, gathering engineering studies area by area zone is a key task of this. So the citizen petition will remedy this gap and is now necessary because the town is solely relying on the RKG assessment. RKG does not have the expertise. What's the solution? Needham previously had a 2025 study done, submitted in 2020. You're aware of it. Excellent information on there. We all learned a great deal from studying that 2025 report. And that information came from this technical consultant, NV5. We've been in touch with NV5, and of course we understand this procurement requirements to get specific. We're not suggesting a specific vendor, but NV5 is the kind of consultant that could fill this current knowledge gap. They do have prior experience while working on the U5 study.
Anything that is procured by the town, you have to put it out to bid. You just can't hire a consultant you feel is more qualified. We had a whole process of hiring this group that we feel has the technical experience. I'm an architect. We have attorneys, developers within the group, and as a town, we felt that we have a consultant that does meet the criteria that we needed for this project. We're not doing a project, we're doing something, but we can't hire. It has to be a process through the town that that is, through Chapter 149. I'm not Chapter 149, through the procurement process for the town. And I respect that you say you're a good group, but I think we need to be able to explain to you the process and the methodology, which I was just talking about, all the work that they did, that is very technical, and see if there are pieces that weren't, like the traffic study and things like that we need to, but they're sitting in the room, and I feel like we are not being respectful of their work.
No, we're respectful of their zoning work, absolutely, but that's sort of what Steve said. There were pinch points there. To look at one of the things that sort of came up, covered it already, is the propensity discussion. And these are not facts. This is a prediction. We don't know if it's right. Whether development will be faster than the prediction model. Predictions are assumptions. No one has validated these assumptions, so no one really knows. One of the concerns is the good work that people are doing on the school master plan. That indicates a decade-long process of building. And what if the propensity is not accurate? So all we're asking for is a reasonable request to have cross-vetting with an engineering technical firm, study the actual infrastructure. This is 100 acres of zoning, the largest zoning for Needham in my lifetime since the 1940s. So it does seem reasonable to first listen to all experts and then decide. And we're not not, trying to demean anybody, but we're saying, why would anyone be against getting more information? Who would not be willing to have more information before making a decision? And I think the conclusion is right there. Thank you very much.
Looks like, sorry, very quick one comment. Is there an assumption that the MBTA is involved in this? Because it's not the MBTA app, it's the MBTA communities app. It's just the communities that happen to be within the general footprint of the MBTA. They have absolutely nothing to do with this. It's the, yeah, it's like saying the South Coast community and assuming that the ocean is part of it, but it's just the MBTA community. They have no role in this process. It's ELHLC, which is the state agency, which is a housing and development related. Because I know that there are a number of other people, we've seen public comment where people say, why is the MBTA telling us what to do? Has nothing to do with it.
So I think it's more that, a simple Google search turned up that, it's the RKG/MBTA. Anyone can do that, and it talks about how basically it's whether it's marketing or it's just Google connecting the dots. We're not saying that RKG is representing the MBTA.
They weren't independent, they are a private company, they're not public entity.
Right, so what we're saying is we want a separate engineering firm that is not working in housing, they're not working in zoning, not going through to do this rezoning. They're strictly looking at either infrastructure, and they could do an overlay of proposed zoning areas. Look at the strengths and weaknesses of the infrastructure in those particular areas. So it doesn't seem unreasonable.
So I sat on the permanent public works committee for 10 years. Most of my work, I just opened up a community center today. Most of my work is public work, right? And large public work and housing. I understand what you're saying about the master plan, because I was on PPDC when we did a master plan and they were just redoing the master plan. And there's engineering that goes into specific buildings. This is for zoning. And they're experts in zoning and they're experts in writing zoning. And Katie has additional information. We are missing something. I agree with you. So that's engineering. There's stormwater that Kevin is working on it right now with the group. So you're not wrong in saying we need more information. But what the intent of this to create zoning to allow for more housing, they are experts in it, and they're running modeling and engineering for all of the zoning. But they're not civil engineers, you're right. And we have those experts, and that Katie has cited all the reports that we have, and that is valid for you to look into and look at that report.
So we know that when we're voting on zoning, it's on a town meeting. When we're voting on zoning, we're also voting on infrastructure. We're voting on types. We're voting on that locale, but we're also voting on the holistic side of it. And we know there are 1 to 3 year plans that our wonderful DPW companies already planning study, but that won't be available. That information, along with the other described studies that are here, won't be available necessarily in time for both. Therefore, a firm like this could get very involved. They could concentrate specifically on the focus of what we're asking for, what many others are asking for, and inform the town meeting voters prior to making a decision on voting. Because there may in fact be that there are really good areas where the infrastructure is so deep, hefty, that this is where you really want to put more zoning, because it's just naturally going to fit there. The sewers are bigger, power grid is better there, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm going to give Katie King a chance to speak. I do want to just briefly point out that we have separate lines of expertise. We have our consultants who are experts in zoning, in modeling, and the requirements that the state law has provided us. But we also have technical expertise in our town departments. Our employees are licensed, they are experienced, and they are knowledgeable. And I have to say that I feel that you're doing them a disservice because all of this information is calculated and in print and available. And I think that by and large, what I'm understanding from this is that you feel they're not independent. Okay, I would like to dispute that implication. Katie?
Thank you. I just wanted to share a little bit of context for some of the sources for some of the reports that were referenced. For the Needham 2025 study, a lot of that analysis that was done was source data from town departments, studies that we had already about our existing system, and then they interviewed town staff. They did not do any engineering studies, and they did not do any additional data collection. They took the source data and information that we already had and kind of overlaid that with what they were hearing from staff. And so a lot of the source data for that 2025 study is still in use today by our staff teams, and is foundational both to this memo as well. So there wasn't kind of an engineering component to that study, just to clarify. And so I think, the master plans that DPW has in the 5-year capital plan, and they're outlined in the memo at length, I think they will be hugely helpful for everything that the town does. But they are much bigger in scope and timeline and cost. And they will be used for things far beyond zoning. So I don't want to undermine that those master plan studies are important. They will be incredibly helpful. But in all of the analysis with the town departments for this memo, they did not feel like they needed that information to be able to speak to what they know to be the existing infrastructure and the impact that the zoning would have on it. So I just wanted to clarify that it's a both and. We can speak to the zoning with confidence, and we look forward to having those master plans done to inform everything.
I'd like to open this up to member discussion.
Can I just ask a question? With a certain amount of time. This is in the annual. Money. And then it's following the information. And then sure. So can you talk about the information?
I think that's something we need to hand. Leadership. We're pointing out to you the lack of study. We're not folks, we're just volunteers that are trying to follow us. We're not in a position to do procurement. We're not in a position to write contracts. We're not in a position to decide when the vote is going to happen. We are looking for this information. We're going how they vote, largest zoning change since the 40s.
Right, but to double up on you won't do the procurement, that's done by Dave Davis. But it would be something that I think there's 5 weeks it has to get up and be aired out, it has to be advertised. Then there's like 3 weeks to get revised.
I mean, we're in this situation not because we didn't create this.
Right.
So.
But I'm wondering how
Are you
you
putting it, trying to put it back on me?
No. Russell, how
I
do you
don't know,
timeline?
open it up to.
It's very hard.
So can you just tell us your name? So that
Sure. So my name is Ken Buckley, president of Precinct G, Warren Street.
Yeah, and then let's just make sure, because we're out of room at the table, but we still have to have you heard by the owl.
I'll use my stage.
I'll let you-
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, the indeed, as we came taking a look at the proposal, um, I became concerned because of the fact that, I heard Katie say we're gonna look at the likely build out, not full build out. Don't know, again, no one knows, but at full build out, it would be, and the neighborhood plan would be 30% growth households. Likely that would be a 30% growth population. And one of the things that concerned me is, because you've got 3,300 unit puzzle, I'm seeing a puzzle.
Well, the MBTA, okay, the full bell out.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm using the
Sorry, I
numbers from the.
Yeah, no, I misheard.
Yeah. So 3,300 is about 30% increase in the about 11,000 or so households in Needham today. That could likely be a 30% increase in population. And one of the concerns I have when I look at the 8 students per 100 households versus about 47 students per 100 households now, to me, that's a discrepancy. And I don't wish to bog this meeting down, but there are discrepancies throughout that have me concerned and say, what is the impact going to be on the town? And I don't see an answer, especially in the sewer area. I don't know how big the names are. I don't know, that's what an engineering study would do. I don't know how big the power grid is. I don't know what the stormwater runoff's going to look like. That's what an engineering study would do. So, yes, late to the party, I don't know, but I think one of the things in reading the MBTA Act, and thank you for your question, I don't think anyone's confused that it's not the MBTA, but we use it as a hand on the MBTA Communities Act, so get it. State has put a requirement that you must have this, and it's going to grow the town by a lot. What is the impact on the town? Should we do full neighborhood plan?
Somebody said that they're having trouble hearing, I just don't want anybody to.
No, I'm happy. Sorry.
There we go.
Hi.
You can sit too.
No, I'm good. Standing's great. And I can wave hands. So fundamentally, I do feel we came a little late to the party, but don't know what else to do because we didn't have the information. And it does say in the Communities Act that the state's willing to negotiate. So while I appreciate there's a deadline, it also, I think, would make more sense that the town make an informed decision as opposed to an uninformed decision, and then run into problems like we did at the high school, right? The high school, we built it out, it's a great high school, it was almost instantly overcrowded. We had to improve the cafeteria, we had to build out 8 new classrooms and an office space. Hate to run into that again.
But unlike this, you know why that happened. That was because we built that school with these systems, and they have rules limiting how big we built that school. So that was a known flaw in the system that doesn't apply to us.
Respectfully, the fact is we don't have the information about what the population growth will look like. In the master plan, the McKibben population study goes out 15 years and it's a flat line for students. So the master plan itself doesn't encompass anything to do with the increased population coming from this rezoning. I'm saying the capital plan didn't incorporate that. It's explicitly stated in the master plan. So that's why we're here.
Thank you. Discussion? Dean?
Yes, in reading over this excellent memorandum that Katie King put together, what I'm seeing is references throughout the plan to the engineering studies that have been done in the various departments, various sewer, water, wastewater, etc. For example, with regard to water, planning is underway to add redundancy to Needham's water system. Town meeting appropriated design funding in 2024, etc. And then when it comes to sewer, the town completed a study in 2016 that identified target areas. DPW has requested $1 million in FY 2026 to formulate a new plan and cost estimates for continuation of II removal. I mean, I needn't go on, but I can't because I've already started these. Same thing with stormwater. DPW has requested that the May 2024 annual town meeting provide appropriate $250,000 for public works infrastructure to supplement ARPA funds to support a stormwater plan. And then we already talked about the need for well, first of all, the department, the DPW is currently partnering with MAPC to complete a transportation master plan intended to anticipate by the end of 2025. But in addition, we say that we support a traffic plan. And also there's reference to the parking plans that were done recently. The kind of engineering plans that Mr. Jamian seems to be talking about are the ones that the town has done, is doing, will be appropriating money to do. That's my comment.
Thank you, Gene. You wanna jump in?
Hi, thank you, Gene. I think we read the memo, we read all of those carefully, and so one of the reasons we're here is because we were grateful to get this level of information. What we recognize is much of this had been in the works and some of the things that were done could not incorporate the rezoning because they didn't know about it at the time, some of the older plans. Current plans, I think we heard even in the last meeting, listening to the recording, things like water supply, fire flow hadn't yet been built out or thought through in terms of the rezoned areas. And that's really what we're asking is, what will this rezoning, how will it impact? These are things I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but I think some of these studies that had been asked for funding, I think they were planned outside of the thought of the rezoning for the MBTA community center. And some are. Like it's unclear to me reading that.
So the master plans and DPW's capital requests for the 5 years are things that they need regardless of zoning. So things they need for ongoing maintenance and understanding of our infrastructure all the time, but that will factor into zoning. So it's not a plan. They don't need to know what the zoning is. It's an analysis of all of our infrastructure updated from the previous analyses that we had. So these are things that we do generally periodically to make sure we have the most current information about our system. So it's that.
Right.
So they're not intended to build in. It's a snapshot in time understanding of our systems.
Right.
So that then they can plan.
Correct. And one of the things I think we're asking for, that was my impression as well, that this is routine work. It's not routine, it's careful and difficult work to figure it out. And one of my impressions in reading this is that the plans were indeed that snapshot in time. I think what we've been asking for in this citizens petition is to very specifically look at the rezoned areas and look at infrastructure there. And is there going to become a pinch around sewer, water, drainage, et cetera, traffic in those particular places? That was the purpose.
May I respond to Ms. Coakley? I'm going back to the comment that you made, Heidi, about the professional competence of the town staff. Because in every one of these areas, the town staff commented on the existing plans, commented on the zoning, and gave the evaluation that the current systems with the improvements that are planned can handle the zoning. Our staff said that, and we have excellent staff.
Katie, you at the beginning of the meeting read in the edit to the recording. At the beginning of the meeting, Katie, you mentioned you added into the memo language with regard to infrastructure relative to new projects. Correct. So sounds like one of the concerns might be that might not be infrastructure to support that. I think what Katie just read and what's in the minutes is that the town's not required to create infrastructure in order to support a project. My experience from a development standpoint has been that if there are infrastructure requirements, it's usually placed on the developer. So whether that's to reduce I&I, which is usually at a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1 ratio. I think we talked here meeting 2 weeks ago about impervious area and stormwater. And the new projects all have to meet stormwater, the current stormwater requirements. So that's a big issue. Should be in the town. So trying to understand what having a holistic. So we've got, I believe we have a plan, but we have a holistic infrastructure understanding. Phenomenal staff.
Mhm.
What does this, what you're recommending, how does that enhance what's already,
Be in place.
you know, what's in place or not in place? If the projects are gonna be required to provide infrastructure in order to support it.
Let's see. That is a fantastic question. We muddled over that quite a bit. And one of the things that, again, we're not, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. In the guidelines for the MBTA Communities Act, the guidelines are really, I think, what rules. And one of the very specific guidelines says that community can be taken out of compliance if you hold up permits for projects that are outside of just dimensional requirements. So if someone comes forward with a project and it fits the dimensional zoning, I don't think infrastructure, again, this is the gray area, but they explicitly say the town can be dinged and taken out of compliance if you don't if you don't come forward with a permit. And it was one area that we thought was problematic, and one of the reasons that we came forward with this petition to say, we think the town's going to be on the hook. And Jean, I just want to be very clear. We don't mean to impugn anyone in the town staff. Town staff is fantastic. The memo is great. I think that there is a lot to digest in this, in what's going to come through to the town is all. And I think we all are here to get caring about the town.
Absolutely, and that's understood. I clearly don't agree with you, but I do understand that the reason you're here and the reason you've gotten involved is because you're not. So just know that, please. Katie, it sounded like you had something to say.
I just wanted to offer some clarification on as of right versus special permit and what does that mean for the infrastructure tax, because I think this is the most confusing part of the MBTA communities part of it. So the use is allowed as of right, and so if multifamily housing comes in under this overlay and it fits the requirements of the zoning, you know, the planning board has to issue that permit. It can have some minor conditions placed on it. But I think the big caveat to that is the whole set of regulations that would apply to any building, regardless of if it's as of right or special permit. So building code, fire code, our infiltration guidelines, stormwater bylaw, our wetlands requirements, you know, all of those things exist, whether it's as of right or special permit. So that's just true for any development. And so the situation where under a special permit process right now, if the planning board could say, okay, you have a development and we would like you to invest $3 million in this intersection to help out the town because you're coming to us looking for a special permit. You know, the planning board can do that under a special permit. Under as of right, the planning board cannot. They can't say, how about $3 million for that intersection? They can't. But that does not mean that the town would have to proactively invest in water or sewer if it's needed to make that project viable. So I think the distinction is we can't require something of the developer, but that doesn't mean that an investment is being required of the town to make the project possible.
So
So that's,
I'm not a lawyer and I don't play on TV. I'd love somebody to get a ruling on that very specific guideline that says they're not allowed to.
so there's some of that language in this memo, which town council has approved, our FAQs, there's language about site plan review, which the town council has approved. He will be at the meeting on the 30th. I'm sure he can speak to the board's had this question. So that is our town attorney. That's who we rely on. And I'm sure he can provide that answer.
And I'd like to add something. So I'm one of the members of the planning board. Jean McKnight was a member of the planning board for 15 years, right? And literally for last meeting was the last meeting. And so I'm vice chair. I'll be chair in May. And we are very concerned to understand, and I respect everything you're saying because we're also concerned about how this moves forward. So during the last meeting, we went through the submission requirements for these applications. And I'm just gonna go through the items really quickly because we're also making sure that we feel comfortable for the community to be able to review these items because it is more limited than a special permit, right? So we have a locus plan, we have the location of off-site structures, we have all existing and all proposed buildings, setbacks from the property lines for building elevations, we have existing and proposed contour elevations, parking areas, driveways, facilities for vehicular and pedestrian movement, drainage, utilities, landscaping, lighting, loading and unloading facilities, provisions for refuse removal, and projected traffic volumes in relation to existing and reasonably anticipated conditions based on standards from the Institute of Transportation Engineers and prepared by a licensed traffic engineer. So people aren't just gonna come and build something with us just with, the planning board just signing off. There are, A to O conditions that we have to review and make sure that they comply with the zoning that is being created.
Understood completely. The point that, I'll just go back, it sounds like town council's already looked at it. When reading the guidelines, I become concerned because
We do too. We understand.
they're trying
We
to
do
say,
too.
I think, you can't delay or withhold projects that are dimensionally correct. And that felt like the state was trying to say, no, you've got to you have to support these developments, that's all.
And I think that the ease of as of right versus special permit is what they're proposing. But we still get to see where the parking is, what the traffic is, and certain criteria to be able to review it.
Yeah, that's
Because it has to be reasonable.
right. If you don't have enough water to supply that particular development
So
in the
this is
neighborhood.
drainage and utilities are part of that.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah,
I heard
so
that. Does that mean you can? And the state, has
they
anyone?
have to prove that all of this is in compliance with what the town requirements are in the business. And if it all goes well, and we feel like they have a respectful landscape plan, the curb cuts are in the right location, the traffic study by an engineer, then we don't want to hold it up because we want to have housing occur.
I heard all that.
Right.
I'm still back to, if the water pipe isn't big enough to support, like the inflow supply, the water supply
Correct.
in that neighborhood
And you don't have
isn't
right
large
pressure.
enough to support a 3.5-story building with 20 units and so many bedrooms. Can the town just say, no, thank you?
Yes, and that's what I asked at the last meeting, which I think Katie understood it as fire, and we were just talking about it. It's when there's pressure in the town, you need a certain amount of pressure to bring in plumbing, right? So a civil engineer will bring it to 6 feet to 6 to 4 feet, and then
Understand.
we'll bring it in, right? The plumbing engineer brings it in. If there's not enough pressure, it is not the town's responsibility to replace that entire pipe and create the pressure necessary. And that's what I wanted to confirm because it happened on a project that I did in Somerville, where they said you have to replace it, and it blew the project up.
I watched you say that. I watched you say it in the meeting, and I still came back with, why is this in here if dimensionally it's okay? Because I think they made an explicit statement so that what happened in Somerville couldn't happen to these projects. That was my,
And that's what we
Thought.
just changed to make sure that we're covered, so that the town is not liable for infrastructure for a specific project. Additionally, this is one of the reasons why we're sending state plans check prior to bringing.
be interesting. So, yeah.
I'd like to ask a question. So. I'm talking to the.
Yeah. And while we're muted, or I mean, sorry, while we're transitioning, I got an email that everyone at that end of the table is very hard to hear, so you all just please project.
Okay.
All right.
Will do. All right, so just start with your name, please.
Yes, my name is Christine Urban. I live on Webster Street in Precinct E. Well, I have learned that that becomes the important identifier. The question I had as I read through the RKG report and the memo, and the revised memo and so forth, is about timing. The net absorption figure really bothered me, because the assumption is that this is going to happen slow and nicely over 19 years or 34 years. My contention is it's going to happen in 5, I guess, because Needham is an attractive place to live. Contractors now are happier to build here than they used to be. This MBTA position is open, territory. I think you're going to get a lot of people lined up to build, not just the Carter Place, as we all know, but all the other pieces you identified. So I can't imagine a timeline where 19 years from now, we're going to get to the base model. It's just incomprehensible, is in my experience. Can anybody explain why it's so long? Why do you think it's going to take 19 years just to get to the base model for net absorption? The net absorption numbers.
In each of the,
Am I
Yes,
making
Lenny.
myself clear? Okay. Am I?
And I think we need, if we can ask Eric to
Yeah.
speak to that.
My contention is Needham is attractive. People are attracted here by the schools. MBTA wants this. We want this. Growth happens. All those good things. And with all those external pressures, I can't imagine that the new housing is going to dribble out at a nice, refined rate over a long period of time. It's going to come in bunches, right? People will come to you and say, I want 50 units. I want to put up 200 units. And we'll have multiple people doing it at the same time.
It's not going to come at 14 year. That is an accurate statement. Or at least I think. If you've seen over the last 10 years, even at nothing, they got 526 units. 526 units if you're 4 years to it. Okay, so it's unlikely to come in little nice 50 piece chunks, right? All the Having said that, the vast majority of community of the 177 communities in the MBTA area don't have as of right zoning. So I think I don't know what the answer is, right? We use historic data that does require a special permit to look at absorption and look at building. Now, I don't think in 5 years, 1,900 units are going to be built. Maybe it will, but I don't think so, because I believe, and maybe the developers and attorneys here to deal with developers can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe just by going from special permit to as of right will be the only decision point that either a property owner or a developer is going to make to have to invest in Needham. There's a lot of other things that go into the transaction of real estate and the development of a property, where I don't think it's all going to just all of a sudden happen. That's all I can really say, but I don't think anybody really has an answer, because most places require special permit. We're sort of lifting the cap.
Yeah, I think we could bring to the discussion, however, recent experience at the Oak Grove Apartments in West Roxbury, which were built in, I think, 2018, and how many units, do you remember? Oak Grove? It doesn't matter. Okay, but the Oak Grove Apartments, the Parkway Apartments, let's see, Kendrick, Kendrick and Modera here in town were absorbed within 3 to 4 years. 4 years, okay. So that to me is a better historical touchstone rather than taking the average of the 100 units per year. Because I really think these external variables, this is not a normal situation, is what I'm saying. We have new players in the mix, which is the state, right? We've got new concepts called forced zoning, rezoning as opposed to just zoning. Right? We've got new money coming in. It's state and federal money that is available now to accelerate this process. I think all of those exogenous variables are accelerants to what the normal absorption rate would be. All right, and you're right. Nobody knows it.
Yeah, I think you also need to take a look at the size of the parcels where that 526 units were built. Look at the size of the parcels. You can go through the entire MBTA model and see what a typical build out looks like. Not 526 units. There's very few of those parcels. So I think to use the Kendrick is not really a good example. I think a better example might be on what's the one right in downtown?
50 Dedham.
Yeah,
Yeah.
50 Dedham, right? Something small, smaller parcel, smaller scale. I mean, that's really what this group, I think, is.
Was that the larger developers are not really interested in Needham because of parcel size. And I would also point out that interest rates are vast.
That's true. Yeah, and there are so many of these. In addition to when you throw in the propensity to sell, which is a totally behavioral assumption, and it can't really be just brought down to how much do you get. There are 40 other factors, right? So it's complex and unknowable situation. All I'm suggesting is just based on my professional experience and looking at a lot of markets across the US and doing demographic studies and projections and so forth. When you have that many external pressures saying, do this, this is a good thing to do, you will have greater speed than you have historically. Okay, that's
I just wanted to add, among those externalities, you talked already about the propensity to sell, which comes into it, the smaller parcel sizes and the interest rates. 177 communities are changing their zoning at once. There's only so many developers, and more importantly, there's only so many companies in there.
Yes,
And so,
that's a very good point,
exactly,
yes.
so there's going to be a natural limitation on how many units can come online. You have to get the zoning passed, you have to get it permitted, you have to get the financing, you have to get it built, you have to get it absorbed. There's a lot going on that's going to certainly slow down, I would anticipate, the amount of development that I think a lot of people are expecting to see, just because we're not taking in the very externalities.
I think the obstacle, you're right, the speed bump is the contractor availability, because my guess would be most of the big, Toll Brothers, Cabot, all of the Petrini people have huge maps on their wall. Red areas, pink areas, blue areas, where they want to go. I would imagine Needham is a very attractive place, even with small parcel
I'm
sizes.
just gonna point out that the timeframe that you cited, 5 years, overlaps very nicely with our 5-year plan, which includes these assessments. And I'm gonna say that it's time to thank the petitioner and supporter for your participation. And I think we're gonna have board discussion or committee discussion at this point, unless you all have anything else that you want to add.
Thank you for inviting us.
Just thank you for
Thank
inviting
you.
us.
We appreciate you
Thank
coming.
you for all your work.
We really appreciate you coming. Thank you. And you're welcome to stay for the discussion. You don't have to. You're not kicked out. All right, so that was a lot of information. Discussion.
Well, I just wanted to tack on to what was said before about the experience this town has had with rezoning. And it was just about 18 years ago when I started on the planning board, and my experience before that had been on a special committee to come up with the zoning for Chestnut Street and downtown, that was, we hoped would encourage multifamily, mixed use multifamily housing. And the only project we got that took advantage of the extra height was the 50 Dedham Avenue project. Now that developer, who I remember as just being a really good developer, interacted really well with the planning board. He wanted to do a deal with the property owners on the corner and bring that project right around the corner to Great Plain Avenue, and he could not do a deal with it. That would have been a wonderful project. And I really don't think it's the fact that we have the special permit that's the barrier. Oh, if only we were allowing this by right, it would have made all the difference. It really is that it's just not economically feasible to do a 4-story apartment development, or particularly where we were requiring mixed. That's the big difference. It's not going for a special permit to by right. It's allowing standalone multifamily. But you know, because of my past experience with this, that nothing much happened. I'm sort of figuring, yeah, it's going to be real slow. Nothing much would happen. I'll be lucky to see 2 or 3 nice developments in the rest of my lifetime. That's the way I feel about it. Not that we're wasting our time, but that I really don't think it's going to make any really big difference.
Hi, I am a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. So my question is very procedural, because that's where my mind is. So I'm just curious how this kind of works in the context of all your efforts and everything. And so I'm kind of not even thinking about the specifics because I'm late to the party here. But so is there any other way to kind of accommodate kind of what they're wanting? One is my question, but the second part is, what is it really? Because even if they got this information, is their desire, I guess I should have asked them, but like to change even the base compliance plan? Is it kind of to go back to the starting point? And if that's not the case, then is it just to be able to present, which I think is great, town meeting with a lot more information, right? To be able to make the decision on the compliance plan or the neighborhood action plan? Or is it, there's some sort of question that maybe at that October town meeting, some other option is available? I guess I'm just kind of not understanding procedurally how this works, either way.
I think they feel uncomfortable with the larger plan without having what they see as more engineering. But well, I think you're right, but I think it's important to point out is the beginning of the discussion that the report that they're calling their predicate, the 2025, whatever, was not based on it. It was based on the same information given to that firm by our town departments. So the master plan? What was that?
The Needham 2025.
Needham 2025. That's what they brought to us and said, your report should look more like this report. But that report is based on the same information Katie's provided in our memo. It does not include additional engineering studies that they're requesting.
Sure, I totally get all that. Again, I just am going back to the procedure of it. So for my question is, I kind of don't know. I'm not clear. There isn't a not approving even the base compliance plan, is there?
Well, there is
if that happens, then
not being.
Okay. So I guess that's kind of where I think maybe the educational piece for everybody at this point in time is a procedural thing. And I'm also a town meeting member and I'm on the finance committee. So some of this is a little confusing to me too. But I guess I feel like it seems like, oh, well, if we get this citizen petition passed, then somehow this is going to slow this process down and we're going to be able to change the base compliance plan. Nobody's actually said that to me, but that's what it makes me feel, that there's going to be
swell of people actually being able to think that they can change all of this. And I guess I want somebody to explain to me, because I haven't been a part of it, really how that is, could be possible, or how that absolutely isn't possible. Because I do think sometimes there's an emotional level of people at town meeting, they get kind of swung up and they're like, well, people aren't gonna, tell me what to do. And I think that's great. I want more people involved in town meeting. I really, please, but I guess just procedurally, I'm just really confused about how this is actually kind of putting the needle anywhere. And like you kind of said, I don't want to waste anybody's time with my question, but I just really need to understand if possible.
Yes, it's a great question. I think there's two parts to it. The first is, if town meeting approved the citizens petition appropriated funds, could we spend it and still meet the December 31st timeline? But partially. Okay. So I think the answer is no, both because it still remains unclear to me what we would actually be procuring with those funds and what the engineering and technical studies are that they're looking for. The petitioner has met with the DPW director and our water and sewer superintendent, and I think they also were not clear. So, I figured just getting to a level of detail where you're actually able to procure an engineering study has to be much, much, much more detailed, and our town departments are not clear on what information is not available. So plus procurement and executing on a project, and then having that inform any changes to the zoning, I don't think it is possible this calendar year. That's the very process-oriented question. I think the important question, though, is does this committee feel like there is information that is lacking that you believe town meeting would want? And that, for the finance committee to petition the select board as well, I think that feedback from this meeting would be really helpful. Just substantively, you feel like you would want these additional funds to do something additional.
And what is that? I think that has to be part of the equation.
What's the value?
Yeah. What information is missing? In my mind, the information that's missing is the traffic study that will be happening. And some of the tweaks that are happening within the next year or so with some of these things that are already in process, including stormwater. So I don't know, I don't think that I would be spending additional money for all the engineering reports that we already have. Unless somebody else feels like we should spend more money on more engineering beyond the traffic and the processes that are happening.
If I may, I wonder if something that could be added to this memo based on the studies we already have and the understanding that our staff already have is to focus on the particular areas that are being rezoned. And the pump stations that serve that area, and if there are particular flooding problems in that area, and just have a paragraph or two for each area, each like sewer, stormwater, water, that makes the statement that the particular infrastructure serving that area is adequate. Would that help?
Yeah, I'm just thinking through in my discussions with the departments. I think there are some things we probably could provide, but a lot of it also too is the whole system. And so if you think about stormwater management, there might be a drain issue here, but there also might be a whole drainage pathway, and the problem is downstream. Again, this is why you have to both take the master plan and the development application itself and do both. So I'm happy to continue that conversation with DPW to see, what they feel like they could speak to. That would not be before we have a meeting on Tuesday. We send the zoning to the state. That certainly could be a conversation we continue over the summer.
That's going to be why I was saying at the beginning that there is all this information, that it's sprinkled throughout. So if there was just an executive summary, then maybe there is, but at the beginning it just says, these are all the documents, and the town feels with all the document and the additional information as a conclusion, that it meets the requirements of all of the zoning areas that we're looking at, right? So that at least there's a broad, you know, rather than have them in each individual one. I mean, I think you did a great job. I'm just trying to figure out if somebody's looking at it and they just want a quick glance, that would give it some. So that's it.
Part of what you were saying about that there still is a list of requirements that the planning board has to meet in order to have anything go forward, whether it's as of, you know,
Just like
whatever.
whatever the-
Correct, sorry, that was the word. So I also have heard there's kind of this feeling of like that now this will just kind of mean everybody's off to the races, right? And what I've heard in speaking around this table is that's not the case. I think that might be helpful too, also to kind of distribute to the masses that like that's not necessarily the case, and that, you know, there is the planning board and they are responsible for the things that are on there, and that if people have issues with that, they have hearings, they have meetings. I mean, I'm assuming some of those things may still take place. Yes, no, I don't know. And so I just feel like it might happen faster, right? Than somebody was saying, or it could happen slower. But I think the fact that there still is a project for whatever development, I think, I felt like there was kind of like, oh, there's 6 places, there's gonna be development, and all of a sudden that's gonna happen. And nobody's gonna have to get rechecked once this is like off to the state, right? And I think the process and procedure, if it was explained, not in detail, but a little bit more kind of like, this is how this would go after this was implemented, and maybe even just the base plan was implemented, people would understand the process. And maybe knowing that at this point in time, when these things do start to come up, people will participate in that process going from the beginning, instead of kind of feeling, and I'm not saying they haven't participated, I haven't in this group. But I just think that sometimes there's a little bit more clarity, like, I mean, one pager, white paper, you know, that sort of thing, for people to understand, so that they don't kind of make as much of an emotional response. I do know so much work has gone into it, and my mind explodes every time I look at those maps. But so I feel like there's a way to kind of get to where people want to be. Procedurally, this petition is frustrating for me, because it's not really kind of appropriately placed. My legislative cackles go up. So I just kind of feel like, and if there was another way to kind of achieve what they wanted, I would hope that we could get there. But I feel like maybe at this point in time, just educating everybody on where we are and kind of what that means. I mean, we didn't kind of pull this out of the air. The state put this on us. And I actually wrote down, like, did anybody lobby against this when this was going through the legislature at all? I'm just curious. Like, so I just feel, anyway, I mean, nobody needs to answer that. I'm just saying, like, and not anybody here, I'm just saying generally, like, all of a sudden everybody's like surprised by this piece of legislation that came through, like, under the former administration. I just think it's all very good. But, so anyway, that's my comment. I just feel like a little bit more information in that to people to kind of tamper a little of the emotion that I feel I'm hearing.
The methodology and process, just doing a little blurb on that.
Because isn't that really what all this comes down to? Kind of the tediousness of the procedure and everything. I really do.
I think they feel very nervous about it because they don't understand the process and they don't understand the information that is available.
And they understand it probably better than anybody. I
Right.
think they've been paying
So-
attention.
Justifying it.
Is it potentially, I don't know if the department would be able to opine on this, but would water say that there's capacity in the system for X, you know, and if the number of units filled out scenario, or even the zone scenario was 2, and the water capacity was 4. Is there a simple statement like that that says that the town has, I'm super oversimplifying.
To be fair, there is, but no, I don't think we can provide that simple of a metric. I got a question outside of this group about a metric like that for sewer, like, is there a point at which this number of units would trigger something? And, you know, sewer's a good example. You might add 100 units, so you have 100, 200 more toilets flushing, but that development would be required to remove inflow and infiltration concentration of stormwater getting into our sewer. So the answer is like such a more dynamic analysis that the overall impact to our sewer actually might be better off, even if there's more domestic waste going in. So I know that people want like clear, very like linear directions, but this is part of why DPW analyzes each project as they come in, because they aren't that straightforward and they're a bit more technical. So, you know, it makes it harder to explain and put folks' minds at ease, but you know, it's a complicated system.
I should contact a little bit because that rate is coming. This week or two. This will be on the floor. Within the scope of this comment is.
I was gonna bring that up.
I'm wondering if it would be useful or appropriate for this committee to take a vote to support or not support this petition. You know, that is something typically the boards do. But for the planning board, this is their articles. But because this is a special have been working as we are. Do we think it would be appropriate or helpful to do so? Is that ever done by other committees? Well, yeah, it has been done because, like, for example, the Board of Health has voted to support, they voted to support EDUs.
department.
No, it's an elected.
Or the Board of Health, but I mean, is
Well,
this an elected?
So, yeah, I mean, it would be an extra data. Carries no weight, really, officially, but it would be an extra data point. Understand this particular citizen's.
Well, it's not so much whether we say we're for it or against it, it's what we say as our reason. And if we don't say that we think there's been an adequate study and cite the adequate study that's been done, who will say that?
No, I that's my view. I think we say what we did, whether it's stop it. We're here to say what we did. Not a kind of instinct, but strong about it, but
We got the engineering.
It's like we disclose a process and it's
I think Ron nominated himself.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I think you nominated yourself.
In
a very eloquent way.
I think I'm not running. But I think the memo does that, but certainly town meeting, there's all town meeting. I think a walkthrough.
From a summary.
What we did, how we conducted it. And I thought is that answer the information.
Anybody else? Put it out. I know you.
I think what we do is we speak to that we have the information. You don't necessarily provide the citizens' position to say, we're giving this information, this, here's the list.
How do we do that? Not. It's too dense.
Right.
Except if you create an executive summary.
Does it need to be a chair, one of the co-chairs or a member of this committee to speak? Wouldn't it Kate be the one to stand up there and speak? Or in your position? As easier.
I don't think I would. No, but I don't think I would, but I do want to just say that the finance committee and the select board have yet to take a position on the citizens petition. they know that the proponent was coming tonight, they're expecting to hear back, so I think what would be helpful is if Karen can go back to finance committee and give a very clear sense of this group, how you feel about the petition. You don't have to vote to, you don't have to take a vote, but just a consensus. The select board members can do the same when you go back to select board, because they're waiting for that information. So I think that's kind of the first piece, and that might give you the talking points that you would say if you so chose as a town meeting member.
That would be more appropriate, probably coming.
Because we all get assigned.
We were gonna wait to hear what happens.
Like everybody's going at the same.
Fair.
The
That's
planning
no
board, we're gonna
combined.
discuss it the first night of town meeting. Did you have something?
No, I guess I'm just, like, so we're having all this discussion, where is this gonna?
What you're saying is that what if it passes, what happens?
Yeah, like, how's it changing? It's not gonna be the fun. Right?
Could I just come back to, because in my mind, time is essentially. And at least what I hear them say, is, we don't know, we just think, we just don't. We're not in town leadership, somebody else is going. That's the answer. Which is, which in my mind, would be if you calendar it out, assuming when special town meeting after December 15th, would mean that the report would have, if it was adopted, November 15th. And so that would be a mad dash. How many weeks would they have? Well, I mean, I don't know, I'm not advocating this, but I think if you said, okay, by Labor Day, entity is hired and it's up and operating, then it has from Labor Day to the end of 15, do its analysis. Which,
And then we're doing this question.
oh, no, understood.
Then you need 6 weeks
There
to
would be,
prepare it.
no, I think you do the 6 week report. And I'm not advocating, because I think what you get is a bunch of, you get a PowerPoint, November 15th, with a report to follow, I think is what, here's your PowerPoint. But in my mind, that's procedurally what they've set up. It's out of that. And then it's a very good report.
I think the question was asked but not answered, with regard to all the studies that the town already has and already has the money to have in the near future. What is missing? But they didn't answer that question. What is missing? And it seems that by hiring somebody, all the person would be doing would be taking, reviewing the existing reports and what it is the town intends to do, in saying, oh, I found something missing. I guess, what I would say from the point of view of this board is, we think that this town has undertaken adequate studies of its infrastructure, and that the various departments of the town have summarized the applicability of those studies to this project, and they don't see, I don't know, as it's been kind of said throughout that they think that the infrastructure is adequate to support the zoning. And if that's the point of view of this board, that's what I would want to express to the select board, planning board. And I think we said maybe there needs to be a paragraph or two that focus on the particular geographic locations in the town. Is there any particular problem in these locations? May just give an example, because it's been said at public meetings, oh, there's a flooding problem where they can't agree on. So, is there a flooding problem in some particular part of this location that we're rezoning? You know, that sort of thing, some particular thing that we should know about. But other than that, I think what we've got is fine.
Those of us that are on the planning select and which other board and finance will report back to our groups so that they can make a statement. Well, to vote on whether this is supported or not.
I was gonna ask, but where's the 150? Well, then, isn't this moot? I mean, the whole thing is, if you don't have money to do a study, you're not doing a study. So why are we asking to do a study?
Speaking the appropriation conversation. Right, but in order to do that, you need to say where that.
This is free cash. And they're silent.
Yes, so that's an option for the finance committee, but if, in the absence of that, he needs to take it from the.
That's all. We're just talking about the line in the operating. It's gonna have to. Yeah, but you need to know where it's coming from, right?
My understanding that is.
Right.
That money discussion needs to be. All right, so do we have a sense of the committee? Karen, feel like you have a sense of this committee? To take back, so I feel like I have a sense.
Yeah.
I have a sense. Okay. So. Yes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've, looked at other towns, pages and following 34 towns, up to now, it's after, with some coming up in those recent rounds, and I do occasionally look and see what. I know in the case of Lexington, the school report was basically roughly one page letter, the equivalent of the future, used to follow the future, school committee. And I think their economic analysis was a 2016 paper from Boston, how more housing usually leads to more revenue. So that was, I mean, so maybe in a year.
That's the model you
Well,
recommend.
I'm just saying it, and they've had theirs in place for a year, they're starting to have, I think, a couple of potential projects, but maybe in 6 months, people in Lexington will say, gee, I really wish we'd spent a couple $100,000 studying more stuff, or maybe, maybe they'll look at, maybe we do it and they don't, and they'll say, I'm glad we didn't go down that road. I don't know.
Gonna leave it with a positive thing. The good thing about this is that people are listening or and trying to learn about it, and that now we can put together the memo that explains it so that others will understand how much work has been done. Yeah, and also, I mean, I think it is fair. Like, personally, I don't agree with their petition, but it's fantastic to have public meetings. It is fantastic to have people care enough about this. Gary Adamian has met with department heads, he's met with finance committees, planning boards. He's clearly putting a lot of effort into this, and fortunately we can agree to disagree in this particular case, but participation is very important, and we appreciate the effort. However it ends up. Okay, moving on, to our fabulous consultants, who we consider to be experts. I believe we are waiting to see some final report.
This, you mean that?
Facing them.
Yeah, that's really in the past. I thought we were gonna.
Except what I'm putting right up.
I think we thought it was gonna be following all the time.
All right, please read the final report. Okay.
So what you're saying is there's nothing new in the report,
Nope,
everything
You've seen.
the committee has seen.
In my defense, it does say review, but I hear you, there's nothing.
And we've received it and we've all individually reviewed it.
Yes, so. Is the same true of the review of the final zoning?
Would you
Which
like to
is-
go line by line and?
Yes.
Yes, I'm happy to put up the zoning. I have to do my thousands lots of switching of the evenings. You're all slightly blurry through this set, perfectly clear through the other set, but I can't see the computer, so. And
Maybe just big picture changes that are, because we also have this information. Big picture change from the last meeting, rather than going line by line.
I think you would all be much, much happier with that one. Let me put up, I actually have two, well, I have one open now, which is the one that I am changing based on a quick email from town council. So maybe I start with that one.
Yeah.
So since it's there, okay. Since you and I have this. Second. Okay, perfect. So we have made a few changes, back and forth. Lee and I and Chris, your town council. The most recent one, I'm actually gonna go in order. The most recent one is this one, which is a change to the scope of authority. The previous scope of authority had the, where the provisions of the multifamily overlay district are silent. Zoning regulation that applies in the underlying district, the requirements of the underlying district shall apply. Chris suggested flipping that so that the multifamily housing overlay district applies rather than the underlying. I agree with that. In general, if you are using an overlay district, you should be looking to the overlay district for the provisions and not jump to the underlying. So I think that's a good change for this part. And Lee, feel free to jump in with anything as we go.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay, great. For the rest of this, there has been a lot of, I just spent a couple of hours this afternoon checking every single reference and trying to find all the typos, and my prediction is you will find 4 more within the next couple of weeks, but that's just how it works. A couple of things that did change is for all of the dimensional regulations tables, we had called out the tables of for the housing districts, the residential districts, and the commercial districts. I had forgotten the industrial districts, so they're now in there. You'll see those. This one is now on page 5, and so it's 3.17.5.1. You will have seen 4.31 table of regulations, 4.41 minimum lot area. I think I added the setbacks, the basic requirement, and 4.6 basic requirements, and front and side setbacks, which is 4.62. Those are the 2 industrial ones. The other thing is I noticed for the most part of your current zoning section refers to like 3.17 or 3.17.1, and subsection refers to 3.x.x.x. So I did make that consistency in there. We added a new footnote E. So on Chestnut Street in the neighborhood plan, there was a differentiation between east and west as to some of the provisions. For the base plan, there is a differentiation on the west rear setback between east and west.
Where is that?
So on page 5, number E or letter E, this is a new footnote for Chestnut Street within the base district
Yes.
to make that clear, so.
What was the C1? The new C, did you say?
No, new E,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Building height requirements, no change in the neighborhood, the base plan, sorry. I'm just gonna skim through these because it's easier to do. No changes other than those new subsections for the industrial area, no changes in the building bulk requirements either. Just double checking that. Off-street parking, no changes. Development standards, there were some minor changes. But those were mostly references or small typos. So since the last meeting, we did add the stormwater requirements later on. Provision of affordable housing, this is an important one. So the neighborhood plan has a change to that, which we'll look at when we get there. Submission requirements, we added the Institute of Transportation Engineers reference to that. It's on page 10, letter O of 3.17.9.2. You've got to love that. You're much better than some. Site plan approval, no changes there. Waivers, project phasing, or design guidelines. There's a couple of minor typos. You saw that we added all of the language about, for Articles 2 and 4, the even articles, all of the meets and bounds, which we did not have at the last meeting. And then I'm zooming through, making anybody on Zoom literally dizzy to get to the neighborhood housing. The other major changes in there were on the tables primarily. Oh, I reorganized the special permit uses in the B and CSB sub-districts just to make it a little bit easier, and the permitted uses in those two. So that's page 20. And then finally in the tables, on page 22, 3.17.5 dimensional requirements, where we're adding the 2 new tables there. We're deleting the footnote E that we just put in the base plan because it doesn't apply there. But we are adding a new footnote in the building height requirements. I noticed there was a business use in other districts that looked like it, now that we were adding mixed use, looked like it might be something that could be restricted. So I called that out and said it does not apply. And that is it. Lee, did I miss anything major that we have to change? There's something that I do want to talk about with the committee. Well, I found a lot of other things, but and as I said, Lee and I went back and forth, but I can't think, is there anything else?
No,
that
I
missed
think,
on that?
I think in terms of this substance, it's correct. I think
Okay,
we
great.
still need to have a conversation with the group. I think Heidi, 100 West, I think there's still some issues, I think, and some tinkering to talk about. Some adjustments
Yes.
there.
And you did mention that, and I think I saw the emails coming back. We had a quick conversation. I think there's some things for 100 West to talk about it, depending on the committee's discussion, may have some information for some of the other districts, so we can talk through.
But this is our last opportunity, isn't it?
Pardon me?
To talk about anything like
Yes.
that?
Yes, isn't it?
But it's something I think that can be resolved tonight's
Tonight.
discussion. Yeah.
Eventually we'll need to discuss it.
We can resolve it, the discussion of 100 West, we're having to.
Yes, we are going
Otherwise,
to.
we're gonna be in trouble.
I don't think it's that difficult themselves.
But beyond 100 West, we still need to discuss as a group beyond everybody's comments. Yeah, right.
Lee and I had, and Chris, I have to, recognize Chris as well, but we had quite a few emails going back and forth. It's team effort.
I mean, I'm happy to bring it up if you want.
No, I just want to say.
This report?
Oh,
Could I just, comment or ask a comment about this report? As I'm reading over again, and, one thing, I didn't understand. I don't understand the illustrations on the propensity. You know, the little bar charts below, and the things that say above value, 0 to 25% below. I could not understand them. And I wondered, is it something that we need to have some text, a little more text to explain? So I just threw that out. I know you put it up on the board before, and it seemed to make sense when you orally explained it on the board, but in this report, I found it hard. I don't know, did anybody else find it hard to follow those are the bars and everything, and what the different percents mean? It
What
begins
page?
on the
53.
page.
The projected value of build-out compared to the assessed value of the property. So,
Yeah, no, the propensity to change model. It begins on page 39.
Right, so the idea, as I understand,
Oh, what
the idea
caused it
is,
to be a propensity to change, yeah.
yeah, so the idea is that the theory is the property is currently assessed for $1 million. And you could get it for, you could do all the construction and then get the building on there and have it for, what would that be worth? And if it's sufficiently more, then it's more likely to be built.
And then there are wonderful
Oh, you're good.
maps with colors that tie in to these different percentages. What do percentages mean?
So the percentages are what Michael was saying, it's the differential in value. So the higher the differential in value, we use 50% as the cutoff. If the value differential between existing and future building potential there is greater than 50%, then that would indicate that there's a higher likelihood of that parcel to turn over versus one where maybe the zoning change that's proposed really isn't that different from what exists today. So there's not as much value to capture there. So the colors in the actual parcel maps correspond to the color bars in the charts below, so that you can see overall how many parcels within that given district have a certain percentage likelihood of change. And then you can also look on the map and see how the color, you can look specifically at different parcels if you want to on the map to see whether or not under our model, it says those parcels have a higher or lower likelihood.
So a dark red, we should kind of call it, it says, just picked anything, Chestnut Street, page 33. Propensity of change, parcel count. The dark, we should color, says above value. So what that means. And then it's got different percentages, 0 to 25% below, 25 to 50% below, 50 to 75%, and I assume that's below as well. Just to have any idea what it means.
The assessed value, to build it up to what you build it to, with the value that cost. Basically, it is whether there's a lot of value to be gained by redeveloping the site. So if it's low and red, it's like there isn't enough that already has a high value. So there's it's already assessed. That the color from where there's a differential between what it could be versus.
So the blue that says greater than 75% below, that's the one that's more likely to be built. And the red that says above value, that is not likely to be built, the dark red.
I'm happy to add a little bit.
Just thought maybe some text that it's a little bit. I was having a hard time with it. Okay. That's the only thing. The others were, should say A1.
I still wonder if this is enough, but
Little things like
at
that.
least relatively speaking, it makes a lot of sense that where the, where you actually draw the line. So it's the high propensity. It's more than 56, change. But it seemed to me just intuitively that relative, the relative stuff, where it's more green versus where it's more red.
Yeah, I understood the concept of the propensity study, but I just didn't follow the bar charts and whether it was green that was good or red that was good.
It's as simple as that.
Anybody else?
Figure if I can understand it, probably the general public. Because I'm so good.
Anybody else have anything they want to cover? Now. Zoning or the,
Oh, I'm non-zoning,
that's fine, that's fine.
sorry.
Zoning and what you said.
23. Just the interrelation of this works as we have 1.7. I'm sorry, we're at 3.17. 3.17.
Provision of
Now, in terms of the base zone as the development standard as to affordable housing, and it ties to affordable units, but the workforce housing won't be affordable units because it's more than 1%. So my thought, more than 1% AMI. So my thought is that development standards that are defined as tied to affordable units in terms of being integrated well with the complex and that sort of stuff, that those standards are probably relevant to with regard to workforce housing. Because otherwise, workforce housing segregated complex.
Oh, yeah, you maybe apply those standards across all the affordable, should have been expanded.
Yeah, although, so the whole section is affordable housing. The whole section is affordable housing, all right? So we are modifying the affordable housing section by adding a specific category of affordable units called workforce units. So I don't object to saying affordable and workforce, but I'm just noting that the workforce units are affordable under this particular section.
So
Yeah, I'm getting there, hang on. 3.17.8 is affordable housing. And what you are doing in the neighborhood plan is you are modifying 3.17.8.1 provision of affordable housing to add a new category of affordable housing, which is workforce housing. Right, because workforce housing, right. So what I'm saying is the development standards apply to all of the affordable units under affordable housing, which would include your new category of workforce housing.
my only anxiety is have a definition of affordable housing, which 3.17.3,
Definition.
which then refers back to 1.3 of the bylaw.
Which doesn't include workforce. So what we need to do is put a new definition in 1.3 of workforce housing. Yes.
That's fine. We solve it that, just so we solve it.
Yep, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Thank you for bringing it up.
I think we also need to look at the numbering. You have the 317.1 is already in there.
I was adding a new paragraph to 8.1 because it's a multi-paragraph section. So what I did is added that as a separate paragraph to 317.8.1.
Got it. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's one of the confusing ones.
Yeah,
because
I
it's
saw,
not numbered.
I didn't read the introduction.
Yeah, no worries. Believe me, after 4 hours of looking at this today. I don't quite have it memorized. Yeah.
It's hard.
So, just so I understand, like, because what I recall discussing was the concept that, when you have to, average up to add one more unit, the idea, because you've got a development that's, if you divide it by, if you multiply it by 12%, then you have to average up and give us one more unit, that we were gonna make those be workforce housing. Did we talk about? Is that what we were talking about last time?
No, it came out differently. So what it was is that you have a height bonus in part of your zoning under the neighborhood plan.
That's
For
what I
the,
see
for the
here,
commercial
yeah.
ground use, yeah. So the idea is that a developer could choose to do one of two things. They could either do the commercial ground floor and get that high bonus, or they could do 7.5% of the workforce housing to get that high bonus. The reason being that the commercial ground floor plus the workforce housing is not going to be economically feasible. So they can choose one or the other. If they wanted to come along and choose both, I don't think the town would have any objection whatsoever, but.
Maybe it was late in the meeting and I just wasn't paying attention anymore, but I just, that being discussed, thank you.
Sorry. Okay, do we have more discussion or comments? Yeah, so we still have to discuss. So, since we were just talking about inclusionary housing, or zoning rather, I'll just bring it up and start there. So, I know I have brought it up to this group again before, but I'm gonna do it again, bear with me. 100 West is the sole parcel in town that we can be reasonably sure we have a developer who's interested in, or we have an owner who is interested. I know that there is interest in having special this store that we decided available, and the additional. I would like to suggest, because again, I feel that the worth of having actual project theoretically ready to go reasonably soon in a project that is designed to produce housing is too good to place conditions on. So what I'd like to suggest is that we make that fourth story an incentive to add the workforce housing that we've done in the other districts, and make that by right if they include the workforce housing. It's 7.5. So that would be the inclusionary zoning, 12.5, plus workforce housing, 7. I just feel like taking the only project, and think it's like feasible and potentially available to us, and we're handicapped. So I just want to throw it out there,
I know there's been a bit of back and forth with this trouble with staff, but, would they be acceptable to this as compared with the special permit?
I want to say, I had 0 contact.
Oh, I know.
This owner or developer, I did not have any communications with them, written or verbal. I have no idea what their plans are, except for what I've heard.
That's why I said staff.
Yeah,
I haven't spoken with them about
like make
workforce
that
housing.
clear. This is about, for me, I just want to make it clear that I'm bringing it up merits of the potential for this parcel merit. Another discussion, it's not because
that's the question. Was the developer, would the developer be comfortable with the special permit for the fourth floor and the additional? Do you know?
Well, with workforce housing, I haven't had a
No, no.
conversation.
I mean, apart from workforce housing, this isn't that what we were discussing previously? To allow the 3-story by right and have a special permit for an additional story and additional FAR?
The conversation I had with the developer, at the time when I talked with him, it was Tim Sullivan quite a while ago, was that they were willing to go along with that condition.
With that condition, the special permit.
I remember we had 1 or 2 different plans shown to us in the past 2 years that have included that. As a special permit, right? It's come to the planning board twice.
Well, the existing overlay district that you have allows for a 4-story. The existing permit that's issued that they can implement allows for a 4-story. But the 4-story footprint is limited on that building. So
Right.
this zoning would allow a 4-story basically across the entire building. It imposes the kind of setback standards we have in Needham Center, which is that 4-story has to be set in, I think, 12 feet. And it has to be under a pitched roof with a specified pitch. The existing zoning that we have for the overlay that's currently in place allows for a 4-story, but it's only on 25% of the footprint of the building.
They've done more, so they come back with this for a special permit. So the ones that we've seen are for special permit.
Yes, the existing zoning required a special permit for the FAR for what we approved that they did not implement, yes.
But we approved it as a 4-story. So I guess what I'm saying is the 4-story that is set back, for what we're showing in the town center would probably be what we would be seeing anyway.
And I don't understand your question.
Right. I don't think it's, I'm okay with the step back. The incentive would be for the special. If they would still come for, it would be as of right, so they would still come for site plan. Yeah. I just want to make sure it's not like they don't. No. Just because of the communication that we.
I think it's a question of the degree of the site plan approval authority that you have. So, because you make it as a right one, versus your major project site plan special permit, which allows you to impose conditions that are greater than the conditions you can impose through an as of right circumstance. That would be the distinction.
Part of what you're saying is what put more barriers on. Yeah, I mean, originally when this conversation started, some of the reason that we wanted to do this was because maybe it was building, down, whatever. I just think that ultimately, the neighborhood plan will spur. If we have this legitimate opportunity to spur.
Well, certainly, I'm not.
Particularly.
In both the base and the neighborhood plan, are you suggesting, or are you just? Well, I mean, because right now it's basically set up so that it's the same standard in both. Basically, it's a special permit in the neighborhood plan, in the base plan. And it's a special permit in the neighborhood plan. So are you talking about making a distinction between two plans, or are you talking about across both?
I guess I would be talking about.
An option. One of the special permit, outward business. See that?
Yeah, I was wondering.
For the
about that.
answer,
Yes.
but they wanted to pursue workforce housing. They want a special permit.
Yeah, and I
So
think
the 4-story and the increase in
it's an
FAR.
incentive. So yeah, it's
So-
just the.
So that would be 25%. 25% of the fourth floor.
No, right, no, this zoning basically, the 25% of the first floor is what's in the front overlay. This overlay does not impose that. If you have a full 4-story, if it's under a pitched roof, or it's set in, 12 feet in the face of the building.
Just on the street side, on the main side?
Says- It says, it really says along the facade.
Because you could impose the 12 feet around.
From a practical standpoint, the typical width of that bar, I think it's gonna be 70. They 12 feet off of that. Creating a very inefficient space, which might not make the 7.5%. I don't know that for sure, but that, I haven't seen. Those bars are typically 60%.
You hear though someone say it's likely to be one change to the building.
New construction.
New construction. That is. Yeah. I find this enticing. I'm a little nervous. I feel like we're finished. I think as a committee, we took the 10,000 view of water, but we're doing the MVP. Right now, doing a specific project, I feel like it kind of blocks. And this might be something planning board should do. Natasha, eating you. It just seems like this is when our work becomes too much planning board. That's maybe. So I would kind of feel like the planning board, I don't have the wisdom to figure out how to point it. So, we did a great job doing the whole district for that. I just feel like now we're on the specific project. And I feel like I'm on the next.
Other districts now.
Yeah.
So actually, this is one other potentially 4-story building. Story would be incentive, just like on East and West, Husband Street and
Right.
the.
Business district.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that respect, say actually standardized.
From a process perspective, we split the difference and leave it as a special permit in base plan, which it already is. And where the flexibility on the 7.5 in exchange for height is in the neighborhood plan. So that you could put the incentive in the neighborhood plan for the height if you wanted to do it that way. So then the site plan would be with affordable housing, with the workforce housing level. Neighborhood plan, that would
Which might be safer.
Yeah,
Our meeting.
I mean, your
Probably would be
danger
safer
is
at town
that it
meeting.
doesn't pass at town meeting, but it does retain the consistency to its mentioned. So that's.
Right, because that's how that's structured, right? You're right.
Exactly.
So,
Well, wait a second, it sounds reasonable to me,
my
does
lunch.
everyone agree? Because I don't wanna like push this through. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Are there any
Yeah.
objections to the site plan?
No,
Or
I-
just assume that everyone agrees?
Explain again what you do in the neighborhood housing plan?
Keep the base, so in the base plan, there's a special permit for additional height, additional height. For the neighborhood plan, they've got special permit as of right, with site plan review, obviously, on the condition of having the 7% workforce housing, which is consistent with the B and the CSP districts.
And the other district that you just mentioned, in the base plan, it doesn't have any.
It doesn't have any height, it doesn't have any special requirements, special permit requirements.
Thank you for explaining. Yeah, it's.
You're thinking about this right now.
I like that.
It's something you wanna contribute though.
Just some. Like parcel from 30 story.
And,
25%.
No, that's the current overlay. You're thinking about the current.
That's the existing overlay.
Okay.
That's not the MBTA.
we have implications.
We'd be adding unit capacity as of right into the new housing plan and everything. that we-
That's right, because right now it's a special permit under both, so you made it that's right, That's right, I was forgetting that.
I mean, it's just work, you guys can do it, you're the committee. It's work.
Well, I just process wise. It is just work. We absolutely can figure it out. We would not meet the May 1 deadline, so it could be something that you could recommend.
I was gonna say, so we could.
You can always do it through the zoning process of the planning board, because they can tinker with that article.
But the effect would be to add units, right?
Yeah,
So it's not gonna,
it won't negatively.
pull us below compliance, yeah.
But it impacts every number that you're showing to have a meeting.
Yeah, except, yeah, but it's not going to, right, it's not gonna take us down.
Absolutely.
Below.
Stable. And we're
I
not
was just
showing it
wondering.
to town meeting, so
Yeah.
October.
Is actually is the state even gonna take our model, or are they just gonna run?
Oh, no, they take it.
Or they take it the way we present it?
We'll vote on this idea. If we vote to add to the list. Yes. Okay. So. Very messy way. The scenario that Emily just detailed. Would be a recommendation that would propose to add to our list. Which is separate than the other items that we have to review that haven't been a recommendation. It's a recommendation to look at the Hersey area, but this is a very specific one we think would be positive for the move forward. So this is something that we take up after the town meeting, though? So that's, we're up a number?
No, I think this is something the planning board would amend the article within the town. And it would explain why the report is now modified to create these additional.
Oh, wait, but then it sounds like we're bringing, he just thought he was out and now we're pulling back in.
Well.
Be part of
I
another
don't-
conversation.
No, I'm just thinking about the mechanics.
Well, why couldn't the planning board, that they're gonna draft the zoning for the warrant, they can tinker with the language. why
They're
can't-
going to have to, because they're gonna have to have the.
And they would just tinker it, and they would make that an as of right use from a special permit, and then they would just modify the zoning that way, and it doesn't really impact the state because it was added units to a,
Yes.
to a model.
You will have to rerun them all,
You'll just have to add it.
but it's not affecting the application.
I think it is in my.
Sorry, I was meaning this upcoming town meeting, all the things that are going into the discussion that we just had, all the information that we have out now. It's impacting the fall town, yes.
So you're saying that you go with the special permit in the fall and tinker with this
I'm
later?
not taking a position on this. I'm just trying to explain the reality of the information I have now and how it would be mismatched later. So I don't want that to drive a policy choice. It's just understanding what the.
I think we should keep it as is, like to keep it clean, we don't have. We have react to it.
I'm assuming we're going to go through a planning process, the planning board's going to go through a planning process, have public hearings, make changes as a result of those public hearings. And as long as those changes,
I mean,
You have a public hearing on the zoning.
Right,
ordinance
all
before
of
you
that,
go to
but if we
town
wanna
meeting.
make these changes, that would be.
But what I'm saying is during any, I mean, you all know this, right? But because you've done it before, but with any process of going to a public hearing prior to town meeting, there may
There will
be
be changes.
changes
Okay,
that may
yeah.
impact the model.
That would be
You
before
will
town
have to, if that happens, you will have to run the
Yes,
model
right.
anyway. So you might as well add this to the list.
Right,
Yeah.
didn't have a conversation.
Then we would
Yeah.
do.
It's not cast in stone just because we sent it to the executive office.
Well, an HLC might also have comments, so, you know, which would have to be addressed and potentially.
Based on the public process.
If we, yes, there's an article with additional planning. plans.
So-
And if any additional money is required for bond, those funds can be tapped as long as it's.
So I was at the finance night, and they were asking. This would. Use of those funds.
Yeah, we provided them with a memo to detail what the projects were we would accomplish. But this would be some added.
So based on the public comment, and then the other changes, then there would be an ad service. Additional. Request for information, to be able to update all of the before town meeting.
If you end up changing something that requires modeling.
If the model, and I don't think we change all the reports.
Or whatever comes out of the
I don't think
model, it will have
that's
to
really
be-
necessary. I think the only thing that would be the model.
Right, that the model would have. If we're only talking.
Yeah, but
That
if
wouldn't
there's
be
any
bad.
other
Is
changes.
there any
to it.
other changes? Yeah,
But
you're gonna
good
be
to
doing,
know.
I guess what I'm saying is you're gonna be doing changes anyway. Potential.
Right.
Or not.
Yes, and we have an article on the warrant that asks for $80,000 for planning funds. So the planning board can use at its discretion for a project like this. And we pay a consultant like Kate Cheater to make those adjustments. Yeah, we have provided town meeting appropriates the money. We will have.
So
the
that's
funds
how
for
we'll
the
deal with it. I mean, I think it's worthwhile, but. Okay, so,
I have
So-
one other list.
well, hang on a second, I made a very messy motion, does anyone want to second that messy motion?
Sure.
Okay. So, any more discussion? Do we all remember? This was Emma's explanation, that in the phase plan, it would remain, 100 West would remain the special permit for the setback fourth floor. And
For the FAR and the height.
for FAR, but in the neighborhood housing plan, they could use the incentive of adding 7.5% workforce housing in current to that setback.
As a report. Hold on.
I thought I wasn't listening. Does that have the form for the setback? Well, I think that we have it right now. only on this.
We have it right now. We use that in Needham Center, in the Needham Center overlay and Chestnut Street overlay. We just pull this into the design standard that was applied in those districts for this property.
Those things that you were
Yeah, no, I
approved
think
50
it's
feet.
very street-based.
Recessed from the face of the building.
Yeah,
Does
it's
not-
street facing.
It does not specify
So
street
it would be
facing,
on,
but
it would be on Highland and West.
So it would be on these
It
two.
should be on street
street facing. I'll add that.
And that's basically what the design guidelines.
Right, so it would be
Oh,
on
it's
both.
nice having the text.
So, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? Okay, so we're voting, clear to refer,
Right,
Right.
to the plan.
very specific.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Anything else to do?
Yeah, really. Okay, so Lee, you had something else.
Yes, there's just one other issue that, I think a correction I'd like to make in zoning, and that is that in all of the zoning districts that we're looking at modeling, when you're calculating the FAR, underground, the parking can only, the only exemption from FAR is for underground. But the one exception to that is in the Avery Square overlay district, where that parking garage can actually be above ground. And so I think in order to maintain the internal consistency within the zoning framework itself, that same exemption should be provided in Avery Square, and it's not currently in the language that we have. So presently in Needham Center, along the Chestnut Street corridor, if your parking is underground, it doesn't count toward the FAR, but if it's above ground, it does. In Avery, and in the Avery Square overlay, it doesn't matter if it's above ground. And the above ground is also exempt that same kind of standard we implemented on the other side of the highway, when we did all the zoning for the business center. We carried it over to the Muzzy site, and then we also carried it over to the overlay at Avery Square. So I think that change should be great, internal consistency within the zoning framework.
Can I just add something to that, which is, saw your email, Eric and I had a chat. Correct me if I get this wrong. The model uses FAR to calculate unit density. We were not aware that the parking garages, the above ground parking garages, were counting towards the FAR. So if you keep that requirement for all of the sub-districts, then the FAR no longer works.
Now, wait a second, you're saying that the parking garage is not, you were counting the garage in the FAR?
No, we weren't. That's the problem. So that if you had, for example, an FAR of 1.4, since we just used it, that was assumed to be the FAR for the residential buildings, not including structured parking. If you look at the way the zoning is set up, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot there, you'll see restrictions that say, if it's surface parking, this is calculated. If it's underground parking, it's exempted from FAR, but there's nothing that actually talks about what happens if it's a structured parking garage above ground. And so, talking, well, your email, like, oh, you were counting that in the FAR. If you continue to do that, it will reduce your unit capacity. Because the FAR that was modeled in the model is what we see tables. It's assuming, model assumes that that is all residential. What I'm hearing as we look at that is that that's not true. Some of it has to count parking. That's not going to work.
Yeah, on that particular site.
On any site in which structured parking is included as part of FAR. So your recommendation to exempt that structured parking from FAR from one site, absolutely 100% yes, works. We just need to apply it to the rest of the districts.
So let me just compare that out. So if it's not reversed, that means that the base model is not within
Potentially.
Here's what could potentially happen. Someone parks it underground, you're good. Someone parks it surface, you're good, because the model runs all parking as a surface parking. That's the assumption. What I could see potentially happening is actually HLC reviews your zoning and then compares it to what we modeled, and they say, well, you modeled a 2.0 FAR. But what happens hypothetically if you have a parcel large enough that can support structured parking and a building, can't achieve 2.0 FAR. You achieve 2.0 FAR minus the parking.
No, but I think, but maybe I'm losing it, but I thought maybe I wasn't clear for the property at 100 West, I'm saying that the structured parking doesn't count toward the FAR.
Correct.
Right, but what about every district?
In every other district it does.
Yeah, that's what we're worried about.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Not West. Avery is
with $80,000. Just found out.
Now, the first concern we would get is, well, pretending to be somebody who's not familiar with these terms. Oh my gosh, there's no controls on parking structures. I'm upset, right? But that's not true, because the parking structure is governed by the development as a residential units, right? So you still have the height restrictions. you still have the need to put the residential units, which is what they are making their, that's why they're doing the development, is to get residential units. You have a parking space restriction. So it's not like the parking garage is going to cover the entire lot. You still have setback requirements, some of those other requirements.
And you have to split your car between what's this.
No, that's what you're saying, is you don't have to split your FAR. The FAR will apply only to residential.
You'll have more mass on.
Yes,
That
yes,
was the
you will
reason
have
that-
that.
You'll have more mass on, which is not the way it's set on Chestnut.
It potentially doesn't reduce the building footprint, because let's say somebody could make a choice between surface parking and structured parking. Let's say the finances worked out the same, which they do. Let's say it was 40 spaces in a surface parking lot, that takes up X amount of room. But if the height in the district is 3 stories, someone could build a 2 or 3 story parking garage, which means they could potentially have a bigger footprint for the residents of the building, shrink the footprint for the parking, because they can go up, or surface, you can only go out. Does that make sense? My concern actually isn't on the building footprint, it's actually on the inconsistency of the zoning in the model. And I think HLC will flag. That's what I'm suggest. The easiest thing would be to exempt parking from parking garages from the MBTA overlay, but that's
Well, from the FAR requirement.
from the FAR requirement.
In other words, what you're going to do, what we just suggested for 100 West, do simply apply to the other districts.
But can you put a cap on, if you were to put a cap, exempting only the parking, directly, it's housing. Because Chestnut Street is across the street from the hospital. A massive parking lot. Interesting.
Parking garage isn't allowed as a standalone use. And the
No, I
requirement,
understand, it's not, it's standard.
so you're saying somebody comes along and says, oh, I can do my accessory use for parking, I'll put a little bit of extra parking on the side. I don't know that that's allowed.
But would have to be accessory to the residential
It
use.
has to be accessory to the
Correct, I mean,
residential
it
use,
wouldn't be
it's not.
the parking that you lease out.
We've added commercial into all of this.
But it's still parking for the uses on this. I mean, we could put a restriction that parking can
From your
only
end,
be
for the
accessory.
uses of
State's
site.
happy if it would be okay with such a cap, because its agenda is not to. access parking.
And we also.
Parking on board
Four-story
surface.
structures, 4-story buildings.
Sorry, I missed that, I was looking for language.
Well, I'm wondering if we can also. Because you're saying that, when it's footprint, that it's gotta go up, well, if we have a 4-story apartment.
Well, you've got already some of the setbacks for structured parking in there, you could require the parking. You're right, we would still have the mass on the side street. Fine, you're gonna see your building. You could do that, we could look at the setback as well. And I think we could look at the definition of structured parking. Right now, it's parking including surface parking and structured parking on the same lot as the principal use. So we could put some sort of restriction in there that it can only be. Yeah.
It's maybe a little too, but did you bifurcate parking in a building, like, within the podium, compared to a structured parking lot, like a precast parking lot?
Could we also just simply have a surface? Is that going into the model, or would that have a maximum of surface parking as well? Yeah, because it shouldn't affect the model.
Housing still gonna be run off the FAR. It's
Exactly.
just on the property.
I'm just looking at the uses of the neighborhood to see if the parking by that, but I don't think so. There's nothing about parking as a, commercial parking as a standalone use. It always has to be accessory.
No, I understand.
Yeah, but
Definition of accessory becomes a little squishy.
in the table of uses,
You could
for
add a parking
accessory
maximum.
uses, that mentions garages.
Well, I didn't know about this problem just now.
Yeah.
I think we, at least in my mind, we want to control, just wouldn't want unpursued. So
Just wanna ask, I've been reading all of the feedback letters from the state, the communities that have already gone through pre-review, and I've not seen this anywhere. So I guess a process question. When we get that letter back, my understanding is that the state offers a conversation with the community.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering, do we keep the policy as is, have them flag something if they so choose, so that we can have a conversation about what the options are to resolve the issue?
Yeah, I think I feel better with that.
And in fact, that's a really good point. You have you're in the very good position right now. You're sending this to HRC along with it. And so you have that option. Tell us what you think. So, that was
So I think we're making a lot of assumptions. The state is gonna tell us or not tell us, and how we might need to change it, and I'd rather just be in firm with them and talk about it personally.
and they may say, hey, we don't put in a letter, but we saw community X did it this way. So,
Yeah.
you know, so I think that's a really good thing.
No, we're not gonna lose track of this. So we'll make the adjustment at 100 West,
Right.
but we won't make it anywhere else, and then we'll think about how we're gonna solve this problem.
So we will make the adjustment.
Yeah, I just noted that, right? Yeah, and that's in both, correct?
Yeah, that's in both.
As we make that adjustment. The height of the parking garage in question, like on that part.
It's currently, well, I was just mirroring what the current zoning is. I mean, the current zoning basically, allows for up to a 4-story building by special permit. It doesn't restrict, the height of the garage at all at that location. I mean, that's just the current zoning.
Yeah, it's just that we're potentially talking about like units there, even at one space per unit. That could be.
And you're talking about new construction, which wasn't happening under the, which wasn't happening overlay. It's basically an addition on an existing building. We knew the garage was in the building. We knew the framework under how it was being done. Here, you're looking at the potential for something being knocked down and reconstructed. So,
But is there enough big, viable space to have, I mean, parking garages are big. and it's not accessible. Where did this come from? Well, I'm just looking at this Google map. Yeah, so it looks like, is this the footprint of the building? Or this is the lot?
that's the lot.
Okay. It's a long lot, and I'm just thinking of parking garages, they come in specific sizes in order for them to work.
Well, then maybe this also, gets put off to the, why don't we just leave it the way it is? It's an issue. Maybe we can put this out of this one in, for the farm county, work out a viable solution. I think that makes more sense at this stage. I think we leave it alone now. I think it's an issue we probably are gonna want to address for town meeting in the fall, to make sure this property is gonna work. But let's not solve it now.
Okay, so we're gonna leave that alone now for Under West.
Temporal solutions through the summer or something?
Yes, I mean, I think we could maybe think about some ways that might be managed, if that property needs that exemption.
Okay, and then, versus this. As far as inclusion and what we're putting, where that then. If you're sending it to the planning board to review.
You've identified it as it is.
I think the same way that the recommendation, right, it's a recommendation from the committee. I think it's. I don't know.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a recommendation from the committee to the planning board, to sort out that issue with the fall.
But it's also, there are certain things that are recommendations versus studies in certain areas. There should be a distinction there. Yeah. So that the planning board understands that there was a recommendation for it, but due to the process. Vet it out. But I think that's a distinction.
At the risk of asking something along those lines, where did we, or have we landed with that? Because that's something is, we can say 3 stories, but you say 3 stories, 30 feet, nothing's ever. And that might be.
It's 3 stories.
It's 3 and 40 and it's
We also want,
4 and 50.
we wanted to give the possibility if there was mixed use also to have a, right, to have a lower floors there. I remember talking.
Like we talked about.
So we have to vote to recommend final report zoning to the select board. With enthusiasm.
At 9:40.
And if it's any consolation,
Energy.
this is the most complex MBTA zoning I've done to date. So you guys it's a very impressive work that you as a committee have done. I'm just saying.
Traumatized or.
Yeah, look at we're not gonna slide.
11:59, can't come through it out.
Need a RFP.
You did great.
All right, so.
I move that we, recommend the final report, prepared by RKG and Innes Associates, with, one additional paragraph to be added regarding the explanation of propensity change model illustrations.
Okay, and that, you meant final report and final.
But, oh, did I say something? Yellow green, sorry.
No.
Final report.
Excellent. I love that motion. You have seconds, and do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we don't need to vote on our extra items.
Nope, I will add those in.
So we haven't voted in the final zone. I only said the final
No,
report.
You just said, no, that's what I just added, the final. That's all right, we got each other's back.
All right, that's what you were doing. I was
Uh,
thinking I said the words only wrong.
So just to clarify, I know you've had your vote, but just to clarify, from what you saw this afternoon, I'm adding the paragraph from town council that I read to you, I'm adding a definition of workforce housing. Those are the 2 things, everything else has been referred. So just to clarify. Since it was a 2 vote.
excellent work, everybody. A pleasure to serve with you. Does anyone have? Can I just
Motion to adjourn?
The meeting on Tuesday is in Powers Hall and starts at 6, not 7. So just.
It's a certain
Seven.
thing. Oh,
Seven.
that's all.
Yeah.
At town hall.
As
Yeah, Powers Hall.
Okay.
And the representatives here from the elected boards are gonna be communicating a sense of the committee to their respective. In between now and then, so that they can vote on things. Yes, okay, super. Sorry, Kevin, were you gonna say something?
No, I don't want to rush. I make a motion to adjourn. You like to?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have no